Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am creating an alleyway garden for the RHS Tatton Park Flower Show. In episode 1 we discussed the project, and in episode 2 we met the community. In episode 3 we're going to be talking about the design and also some of the design challenges. So let's get straight into it. Also in this episode, I'm travelling to a nearby alleyway in Moss Side and meeting a young man who's completely taken over his alleyway. I'm going to be finding out a little bit more about his trials and tribulations with his alley, so make sure you stay tuned. In episode 1, I shared that the garden was 40 meters long. Well, in actual fact, it's going to be 38.1 meters long, and I was stressing a little bit about the width of the garden. I think originally it was set at 3 meters wide. Now we have come to an agreement and the garden is now going to be 3.5 meters wide. So if you cast your mind back to episode 1, I mentioned the fact that there is a walkway going all the way down the alleyway. For health and safety, we have a 2 meter wide walkway going straight down the alley. And that leaves me with now 75 centimeters on each side. Now, the trick with this garden is on either side of the alley, there are going to be show gardens, and they are of different sizes, but they are very much small space gardens. This is a bird's eye view of the relocation site in Moss Side, and as you can see, there are terrace gardens on either side of the alley. The aim of the terraced show gardens is to create the illusion at the show that the guests are walking through a real-life alley. This seemed like a brilliant idea at the time, however, when it came to designing my garden, this led to some issues. The back of their show gardens happens to be my fence. And like most fences, you get a great side of the fence and then you get the ugly side of the fence. And unfortunately, my Ginnel garden has the ugly side of the fence. Now that causes an issue though, because I am unable to drill through that fence because it could affect the judging of the show garden. I also can't go above that fence because once again that could affect the judging of that show garden. Now I'm in a really lucky position with this garden, as it is an RHS feature garden. My garden is not going to be judged at all, but I have to really keep in mind and be respectful of the other designers, because the last thing that I want to do as a designer myself is be the cause of somebody else losing marks for their garden because I've got a tree or a structure that's too high. So that creates a different issue with this garden. It means that I have to try and get everything in containers, but I need to get some height. But I also need to make sure that as we are going down the garden, that there are things that people can look at, that there are still heights, that there are still, points of interest throughout the garden. And don't forget that my containers are only going to be 75 centimeters wide. This is a tough task. Now, I originally started off designing the garden in a way that would be like an amazing show garden, but what I soon came to realize is if I'm going to get the community investment into this garden, then I need to make sure that I'm providing what the community wants. And so I did multiple consultations with some members of the community there, and that's when I learned actually of all of the different needs. I swiftly began to understand that this is more than just a show garden. This is actually a community garden that is going to have some form of longevity. The garden will be relocated here to Moss Side 2 days after the show has finished, and I'm also going to be mentoring the community for the next 12 months. So in order to get that rolling, we need to do a little bit of an alleyway tidy up. In episode 1 you saw just how big the show garden is. So I needed to walk through this alleyway and figure out what needed to be discarded and what should be kept in order to complete my design. So we started out by hiring a skip and then discarding anything that was rotten or that was broken. This would then help me to create the foundations of the design for the show garden. I could then use the funding for the show garden to replace all of these discarded containers. So we weren't losing anything, we were just making space for some new containers to go into. Now, I'm on my way to go and meet a lovely gentleman called Mark who has turned his alleyway into something really special. So come with me and let's go and take a look. Mark's alley can be found around about 10 minutes away from our alley in Newlyn Street, where our garden is being relocated. Mark focuses on ornamental plants, however, he also does have some pockets of fruit and veg along the garden as well. In preparation for the show, I've done around about 3 months worth of research visiting different alleyways, and Mark's is one of the most impressive. His use of inventive containers is fascinating.
My name is Mark Edwards. Most people call me Eddie.
So how long have you been gardening here on this alley?
Started in sort of 2020. We moved in at the end of 2019, and there was a few plants from when neighbours had tried to plant things down here before, and right behind ours is where all the bins were kept, like all the communal bins. So it was just a real hotspot for lots of just trash getting dumped, fly tipping, etc. And I thought it'd be interesting to try and start planting around there to put people off.
What are your biggest challenges with the alley?
Biggest challenge is definitely watering. Manchester is like stereotypically known to be quite a wet place, but at the moment, and like with climate change, we're having like a warm period. It's probably been hot for about a month or so, I guess. So I've got an incredibly long extendable hose that reaches sort of down from my house, which is probably about 50 metres away. So it reaches to just about here, and then there's another 25-30 metres down there that needs watering. So.
Mark has been able to recruit some volunteers, but the vast amount of the gardening is done by himself. With the lack of watering on this side of the garden, everything has to be drought tolerant, and Mark has not let that stop him. What would you say is your biggest success on the garden?
Biggest success? I think honestly, whenever you catch people, whenever you find people, gotta catch them all. Whenever you find people just like walking down here, and sometimes it's students with their parents, and they've come to visit them, and they're showing them this. I really like that.
Mark's alley is called a reflective passage. Much like the residents at Newlyn Street, he's found that fly tipping is a real issue, and he has gone out of his way to repurpose lots of different things that have been fly tipped in order to create some free containers. I love how he's managed to turn these fly tipped items into works of art. This has been a running theme in every alley that I've visited, and this is the complete opposite to what you would expect of a show garden at an RHS show. And so it really got me thinking about the type of containers that I'm going to be using for the show garden. Somebody came up to you and they said, oh look, I want to start my very own alleyway garden. What piece of advice would you give to them?
Just start. Just go for it. Don't ask for permission to do it. Just you can always ask for forgiveness afterwards. If somebody doesn't like it, you can always move a planter. It's fine. Just do it. Drill holes in the bottoms of things. I learned the hard way that plants will drown if you don't have a way of the water leaving once you've watered a plant.
And one last question. Before you started your alleyway garden, did you have any form of horticultural experience?
Did I have any horticultural experience? I'd love to get my mum to tell you how much horticultural experience I have. It's absolutely nothing. My parents are really keen gardeners, so I think like for the most part I've maybe picked up some stuff by proxy from them, but absolutely not, no. As I was saying before, I was an expert in killing things, like, house plants and the like, so definitely not. And, it's not the easiest thing. It's definitely not come naturally to me, but it's very relaxing, which isn't something I expected. It's just like that nice thing of having your hands in the dirt and building things and being out in whatever nature you can get close to.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for having us. In the next episode, construction begins on the show garden at Tatton. And it's all hands on deck back in Newland Street in Moss Side, where we are still trying to get the alleyway ready for the relocation process. And then we'll be heading over to a very special garden near Manchester Airport. I'm going to be visiting a hotel in Manchester that has converted their outside space into a garden for its refugee population. I'm on the lookout for some tips that will help me with our refugee population in Moss Side. So hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Bye!